Okay, so today we're going to be graphing absolute value equations. So I just knocked that off filter there. And we have a new friend here. It's Mr. Cactus. Okay, I don't know why he's in there. He doesn't really add to anything, but thought you might like to see the new guy. Okay, Mr. Cactus. Okay, so first of all, we are talking about equations that have two variables. So we're going to start by looking at the graph of y equals the absolute value of x. And let's go ahead and make a chart here. So if I've got -1, the absolute value of -1 is 1. If I've got 0, I probably should have gone further here, 0. Absolute value of 0 is 0. 1, absolute value of 1 is 1. 2, absolute value of 2 is 2. And let's just go ahead and do absolute value of -2 is also 2. Okay, so, excuse me, when we graph this, let me make my coordinate plane. This is, of course, the parent function, y equals absolute value of x. This is the simplest form. So we've got -1 and 1. We'll come down here and do -2 and 2. We've got 0, 0 here. We've got 1, 1, and 2, 2. So, as we have seen before, the graph of this is the V shape. Okay, so this is the most basic of all of the graphs with absolute value that we have. So, what we're going to look at is what happens when we change what's within or outside of that absolute value of x. So, so the first thing I'm going to talk about will be vertical translations. So we will be talking about vertical translations. And when we do vertical translations, what we're going to have is something added to that absolute value of x. So let's say we've got y is equal to the absolute value of x plus, let's go with plus 3. Okay, so let's look at our values. I'm going to go ahead and change the page, and I'm sure you can hear the phone in the background. We are going to ignore that. So we are going to look at y equals the absolute value of x plus 3. So now let's again look at our values, x and our y. So let's say we've got a negative, let's start with our -2. Absolute value of -2 is 2. 2 plus 3 is 5. Okay? And then we'll go to -1. And absolute value of -1 is 1 plus 3 is 4. Then 0. Absolute value of 0 is 0 plus 3 is 3. Now we go to 1. Absolute value of 1 is 1 plus 3 is 4. And 2. Absolute value of 2 is 2 plus 3 is 5. Okay? So, building our V again. Let's make our coordinate plane. Let's graph our points. -2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. -1, 4. 0, 3. And so on. Please remember, these graphs are always symmetrical. They are symmetrical, which means that there is an axis of symmetry, and then both sides, if folded over each other, would look identical. So, so typically, as long as you know where you're starting from, you can easily create this graph. So, as you can see, when we compare, and let's go ahead and compare the two graphs. I'm going to fold this actually so that you can see. Well, that didn't really help. My fold is in a bad place. So here is what I just graphed, and notice my vertex point is at 0, 3. So you can see where that is. And here I have moved it up 3 places. That's what we mean by our vertical translation. When we add something to the end here, okay, we vertically are moving this up 3 places. Okay, so that is our vertical translation. Now, we also have horizontal translation. So now let's look at what happens with our horizontal translations. So I'm going to write our horizontal translations. Okay, so now what I'm going to be looking at is y equals the absolute value of x minus 4. Okay? So now notice everything is within the absolute value symbol. So let's go ahead and once again x, and we've got y, and x we will go with -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. -2 minus 4 is -6. The absolute value of that is 6. -1 minus 4 is -5. Okay, so absolute value is 5. 0 minus 4 is -4. Absolute value is 4. 1 minus 4 is -3. Okay, absolute value is 3. 2 minus 4 is -2. The absolute value is 2. Okay, now notice what's happening here. I don't have an actual vertex point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at where I'm going with this so that I can see where I'm going to change. Okay, so we would have to keep going. Let's say we've got 3. 3 minus 4 is -1. That's 1. 4 minus 4 is 0. Absolute value is 0. And now when I go 5 minus 4 is 1. And now all of a sudden, can you see where we are now starting to go back up? So now we're going to go ahead and graph some of this. Let's see, we'll make it a little shorter down here. We'll bring this over here. Okay, and -2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, -1, 5, 4, 3. Let's see, that's 1, 3, that's 2, 2, that's 3, 1, and here. And then we started back up. And remember, I said it's symmetrical. So that means that I know that at this point I can bring these points out so that they are symmetrical to this side. So I can put my line in, okay, and here is the other side of it, okay. So now I am seeing a horizontal translation. I have -4 in here, but I have +4 out here for the fact that I have moved to the right 4 places. So, as opposed to my vertical translation, when I'm adding 3, I'm actually moving this up 3. Down here, when I am subtracting 4 within that absolute value, I'm actually going to plus 4 to the right. So horizontal translation, I'm doing the opposite. Vertical, I'm doing what it is telling me. So let's go ahead and just graph another couple of these. Let's say we've got, and let's go back up to the top here. Let's say we've got y is equal to the absolute value of x minus 2. Okay? Now, I know that I am just going to have to build this coordinate plane, and I know that I'm going to bring my vertex point down to on the y-axis, and then my my graph will go from there. I don't even have to calculate anything. I just see exactly what is going to happen, and I can graph it as such. Okay? And there you have an easy graph of the absolute value of x minus 2. Now, following that easy graph, we're going to do y is equal to the absolute value of x. Let's do plus 5. Okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to once again build my coordinate plane. And I am going to know that since this is plus 5, I'm going to move my vertex over to the left 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then build it from here. Okay? So you can actually look at a graph and tell, you can actually write what the graph is going to be just by looking at it and seeing, you know, where have I moved to, and make it that easy to just adjust your graph. Now, there are two things that we have not talked about, and you will kind of see them, and there are things that I want you to think about, and I'm not going to tell you anything, but what happens if we have two questions? Y equals negative 2 absolute value of x. Okay? So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about y equals, let's say, 1/4 times the absolute value of x. What happens when we bring in a multiplier? So I want you to be thinking about that. Make some charts. See what you think is going to happen. And then we will talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. So that's it. And good luck and goodbye from Mr. Cactus.